Good evening and welcome to Facebook Live with GAE. I am Lisa Morgan, a kindergarten teacher in DeKalb County and the GAE president.
Good evening, I'm Sharon Doe. I'm a high school physics teacher in Augusta, Georgia, and I'm the GAE vice president.
Good evening. My name is Carly Shaw, and I'm a language arts teacher in Houston County, and I'm the current GAE secretary treasurer.
And I'm Joe Fleming, Government Affairs for the Georgia Association of Educators.
And we do have a special guest joining us this evening, State School Superintendent Richard Woods. But as should be expected, Murphy's Law, we're having technical difficulties this evening. So we are working to get him on, and he will be with us in just a moment. We'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and let you know that Superintendent Woods is the GAE endorsed candidate for the 2022 election for state school superintendent. And as he's coming on, I will let you know about our process and how GAE does endorsements. So we have a Fund for Public Education Committee that is made up of elected members from across the state, from Northwest Georgia to Southeast Georgia. We have members on this committee, and they spent about 40 hours in March interviewing all the statewide candidates who responded to GAE. Every single candidate that qualified for the General Assembly or a statewide office in Georgia was sent the invitation and given the opportunity to participate in our process. And everyone that did the questionnaire then received an interview. And those committee members, we spent a long time on Zoom on Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, and all day on a couple of Saturdays interviewing all the candidates. Then the committee had their deliberations, and all the questions we asked dealt with public education. So every single question, everything we took into consideration were the candidates' positions on public education. And then the FPE committee made recommendations to the board of directors for the statewide endorsements, and our board of directors concurred. And our board of directors, if you are new, are also elected from all across the state. So we are a nonpartisan organization, and we endorse based on one key: public education. And so our endorsement means we believe this candidate will support public education. So we are waiting for our guests to come on. And while we are, I'll go ahead and ask Carly and Sharon. One of the things that I know we're going to talk about with Superintendent Woods is the Teacher Keys pilot. And I'm just curious, because I know you all are in the classroom. GAE shared the information about that. Once again, the department has released the information that Teacher Keys this year will not be calculating summatives, et cetera. Is that being shared with teachers across the state? Carly shaking her head no. Sharon?
No, that is not being shared. But at the time, it was the beginning of school, and I believe the document had just been sent to the superintendent, and maybe it had not filtered down to the administrators. But since that time, we've had several faculty meetings, and that is not being shared.
Okay, so welcome, Superintendent Woods. We of course, Murphy's Law, we all had technical difficulties this evening, but thank you for joining us this evening. And I want to start out. We have let all of our viewers know that you are our endorsed candidate for the state school superintendent race in 2022. And I would like to start out by letting you tell us what you feel like you have been able to do as superintendent for educators and students over the past 4 years, and why you think that's important to have that experience moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think everything's one. When I reflect back over the past 8 years, it's been through the eyes of a teacher. I think stepping into the office, I thought it was very important that decision and policy that was made had to be seen through that lens. You find out there's not a lot of kids or teachers up in the Twin Towers, and but where does everything happen? That's always been the classroom. I think even as I moved into administration, my wife, a 30-year teacher, always told me, said, Richard, never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher. And I think that's, has me well over the past few years. Thinking about, what's the most important environment. And again, that's the classroom. That's where our kids are. That's where our teachers are. And so, in anything that when I've looked back at my, past campaigns and thinking about what I wanted to accomplish, it was definitely having both students and teachers in mind. And I think that, we've done that over the past few years. The largest reduction of, mandated testing in our state's history. And that was one of the things that really drove me is that initially stepping in office, everything was about a test. And, and that, really just was very unbalanced. I think, we're about relationships. And especially that relationship between a child and and their teacher, because that person's going to make the difference. That personal relationship of bonding is going to make the difference. So I think we looked at that. Reducing the amount of weight, that the test would count. Because I think that even listening to teachers is just so much pressure. Instead of trying to teach, everything was driven towards that accountability piece that was driven towards the test, and good teaching will, if that's taking place, testing will take care of its place. Accountability will take care of its place. But my faith has always been in teachers because they know where their kids are. They're in the classroom with them, 180 days out of the year, and so we have to trust the professionals. It's not. It's like if you were expecting me to hop on the operating table. And before the doctor, was about to make the, incision, when I question them there, that's not the place where that needs to be done. And so, I think it is, tried to, definitely make sure that we focused on that. Elevating the profession itself, listening to teachers. I think one of the things we did right off the bat was, to have a survey, and we had over 50,000 of our educators involved with that. So I think listening was very important to let teachers know that, it wasn't just lip service. Many times I think in the past, we've went through surveys, we've had things, nothing was done. And I think, trying to make sure we built that trust level, level up there. When we think about accountability as well, one of the things, that I wanted to work on earlier, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, it just didn't happen, to revive our teaks and leaks. I thought it was, really unprofessional to try to treat all teachers, as the same. To be honest, we know in education that a first-year teacher, that's a different person altogether versus somebody that's been in the classroom 10, 20, or even 30 years. And, and how do we, measure that? I think that, what's the intent of accountability? And I've always, viewed it as something that we continuously need to improve. How do we get better? How do we improve our craft? And so, I think, trying to move forward with that has been something, that we've been real focused on. As the feds redid, the Secondary Education Act and being with that with ESSA, always trying to, make sure we have the kids and students in mind. What did that look like? What did accountability look like, from the federal perspective? And I think we did a good job at putting that forward. And even today, the challenges we face coming out of COVID, I always had a conversation with educators today and people today, and I said, you got to realize, I mean, you have teachers who were placed in a situation where nobody who went to school to be a virtual teacher. That to my knowledge, I don't know anyone that took a college class that was Pandemic 101. But yet they were asked to do go above and beyond. When you looked at teachers who teach both virtual and face to face, I mean, in essence, you were doubling their preparations, and that's a lot of work. And then also thinking about, well, these individuals also have families. So they were not immune to anything that was going on. And so I think as we continue to move forward and look at, as I see, I think, I would love to have our pay grade upgrade or our step, increase upgraded. I don't know of any profession where it says that, year 21, you stop getting a pay raise. And I think that, that's something I think is very doable in the state of Georgia. We, do that. I appreciate the $5,000 raise that was there. We were able to give that $1,000, bonus, as well. Allowing retired teachers to come back, not at 49%. I don't know of any teacher that was on 49% of their skill set. And so, trying to, expand some ways in which we can allow those that would like to serve a little bit longer, but make sure they're, recognized for their professionalism and getting paid accordingly. But, so I feel good where we're at. Teachers did an amazing job. I can't say enough about what our teachers did throughout the state and keeping our kids, on task. When I listen to my, fellow state supers around the U.S., I couldn't be more proud of a group of people than Georgia teachers.
Thank you. One thing I would like to point out, what you talked about, yes, we did get that $5,000, but it makes me kind of feel bad when we realize that the $5,000 didn't even keep pace with our other neighbors in the South.
Yeah.
And that's something that I know we just recently received an economic report that showed that teachers in Georgia make 26% less than a comparable position with a comparable degree. And so that is something that is really, we're behind and didn't realize how far behind we really were.
Yeah, well, and I think that, even addressing that again, when you stop at 21, well, there's no growth. I mean, so you're probably comparing one that basically, they have a continuous growth model or pay scale that doesn't stop at an arbitrary thing. And I think that, being able to increase those steps, past that up to year 30, would definitely, help, attain that. And I think that's something that, is doable for us in the state of Georgia. So, I think let's kind of look at that and, and definitely we want to make sure that we're competitive, because right now we know there's a teacher shortage. And to be honest, that can drive people out of the state because you're going to go where you go to sustain your family.
Right.
We would love to work with you on filling in those gaps on the salary step schedule.
Yeah.
After 21. And also one of the things on our agenda is the possibility of creating a salary step schedule for our educational support staff as well. Some states have it, a lot of local districts do. But we always try to keep our ESPs in mind for the great work that they do.
Sure.
But last thing, and one thing I just want to underscore, there were a lot of factors in the reasons why our members chose to endorse you, your record, your opponent's record. But one of the key things, and I think you stressed it, is you're someone who's actually been in the classroom, I think 15 years, something that your opponent doesn't offer, although she claims some school experience that we're a little skeptical about. But you are somebody who understands what the life of an educator is. And I think that's a very important point to underscore.
Yeah.
Well, experience does matter. And I think that, as I shared, at the very beginning, decisions that, I've made have been made through the lens of, And that's someone that's lived, you know, in that area, you know, for 14 years and 8 years in administration, and all that was at the school level. So, you know, it wasn't outside or, you know, working somewhere in the central office, but, you know, what I dealt with was what we deal with day in and day out. You know, what happens at home doesn't stay at home. It comes into our schools. And I think it's so important to have that lens. And, you know, one of the things that I'm very proud of, whether it's, you know, been a teacher, been a coach, you know, a principal at various levels. But, you know, I know what it's like to put on a hairnet. You know, you talk about support people. You know, I've put, you know, scooped many a butter bean and put it on or driven a bus and, you know, and saw things with maintenance. So I think you're, you know, exactly right about a unified pay scale for support people. I think one of the things we definitely found out during COVID is that these people do an amazing job. And without them, we wouldn't have school. You know, you have to have a bus driver, you know, and you have to have people to serve food and all the support people in the front office. They really make the world much easier for us, you know, in the classroom.
Yeah. We have viewers who have already started adding questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to them and then let Carly and Sharon jump in. The first question asks, and this is about the teacher shortage as well. It says, please do not forget the paraprofessionals in the classroom need more money and
Yes.
opportunities to become certified if they are interested. I know some districts have those programs. Is there any option about having a statewide program for those paraprofessionals?
Well, I think that, you know, I mean, for me personally, if I could, I'd love to see a paraprofessional in grades K through 2, at least at the minimum. I think they provide an invaluable support across the board. I think pre-K already, you know, has that in places. But I think we're looking at some things and beginning to have some discussions of what that looks like. Definitely, you know, a good parapro is worth their weight. And, you know, I think their pay, you know, should be upgraded, definitely. But also to have a place. And I think, you know, when we talk about certification, that means talking with our Professional Standards Commission as well to see what we can do. I think that, you know, even having some talk with you know, higher ed and making that transition, because these people, they really are teaching. They're doing everything that a teacher is expected to do. I think being under, you know, the guidance of, you know, a master teacher, you should look at some type of accreditation. It's almost like a field experience, to be honest. And, you know, I wish that I could say that, you know, more of our beginning teachers had that year or so. I know we've looked at things even with our, you know, those young people that are teachers in a profession, of maybe giving them some college credit as they, you know, have that, you know, field experience. So yeah, definitely we want to address that. Our pairs some credit in that area, but we would love to see them join our ranks and become full-time teachers.
Okay. The next question deals with something I've been on my soapbox about for a couple of years, and that is, can we rein in the class size waivers? I have 6 physics classes, all with 34 or more students.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to look at something in that area. I remember, you know, some of the classes I used to have 35 kids in a class. And when you have high school kids, those are big bodies out there. So your room fills up pretty quick. And, you know, and I think that even, you know, following the research, we know, you know, the smaller the class, you know, your teacher's able to do that. And especially, and, you know, we look at, you know, our grades K through 5. I think it's very critical with that. And we have to, you know, look at that balance of what we're trying to, you know, to obtain. Some classes, you know, definitely such as P and things of that nature, you know, have a little bit more, you know, class in, or at least number of classes. But yeah, it'd be great to see what we could do in that area and to have some discussions, you know, to try to, you know, pull that size back down, because it does make a difference, and research shows that clearly.
Okay.
Sorry, I have roofers here. I don't know if you can hear them banging on my roof, but I do have a question, and it's a question I ask all of our guests, and
Sure.
it's, what is your why? Why did you become superintendent? Why did you go into education? What is the reason why you've chosen this profession?
I'd probably say Miss Michaels, Miss Phillips, Coach Cox, Mr. Norwood, Hudson. They were my teachers. They did a great job. I think they instilled that passion, within me. As I tell people all the time, of course, I went into social studies when I was growing up in the schools. All my history teachers were World War II veterans. So, you almost felt like you were, sitting at the feet of Socrates, day in and day out. So, and they just made history really just alive. They were, just great instructors with that. But also, I think it was the love for kids too. I think that, for myself and just being an individual, whether I was, a Sunday school teacher, I just had a connection with high school kids, and that extended down. And when I became an administrator at the elementary school, I mean, to see the lights go on their eyes and just know you have that special connection, and just that relationship building. I mean, my teachers had a wonderful relationship with me, and and that really just had a big imprint in just how I handled my classroom, how I related with my kids. But yeah, it goes back to the people that I mentioned, and like I said, I could keep naming more because I just had a great experience in school, and that was because of the great teachers I had.
Looking back over the past 4 years, what would you say was your greatest accomplishment?
I think if I had to look at one accomplishment, I think it was the relationship back into school. That was extremely important to me, taking the emphasis off the test, allowing teachers to do what to do. I think over the pandemic, we were kind of known for our catchphrase, compassion over compliance. When we came back and started coming back into class, my message was don't worry about the academics, first and foremost, but worry about the relationships. And because I believe that, once that teacher builds that bond and has that relationship, then those kids will go anywhere then that person's going to take them. And I think that is just so critical. Again, as I mentioned, why did I get into education? It was because of the teachers that I had. And I firmly believe that, when you talk about what makes a difference, it is that teacher in the classroom. I think about, people talked about mental health and some of the things that kids going through. And I said, what's the best form of therapy? Not, disputing anything that, of the profession itself, but you give me a great teacher and you give me 160 days. I've had 160 days of great mental health therapy day in and day out, because that person is, is paying attention and notices and really can make some good calls on that.
Okay, we do have quite a few people that have other questions.
Sure.
This one is a comment, and I know if I don't say this one, I will, somebody will come hunting me down. It's about the economics course and the
Yes.
changes that have been made. And this person obviously teaches economics, says they're disappointed in what's happened. The idea to include the personal finance was good, but leaving it as a half credit course is leading to rushing a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that I would say right now, it's a start. I think you get what you can get at a certain time. It's, again, I would have preferred a full credit with that. I think when you think about the, and especially in the area of social studies, that's one of the things you look at, especially when you're looking at history. You're always adding to it. I mean, it's not so much. I mean, you look at math, you look at reading, a lot hasn't necessarily changed, per se. But with history, I'm thinking, okay, U.S. history 200 years from now. Okay, what does that mean? I mean, that's a lot to cover. Look at, being sound, and especially with personal finance. Yeah, I would agree that we need more time. And I think that's where, trying to throw out the idea that maybe we could do some things to get that time somewhere. I think looking at, our graduation diploma tracks, that will perhaps be something. And again, that's one of the big initiatives that I have over the next 4 years. What does a diploma look like? Taking into account, we have, where, even our kids are now taking high school courses down in middle school. So some of that, looks where we could free up some time. So I hope we can add that in. Sure. I think that when you look at government, especially in social studies, government half a credit, econ's half a credit, that does take a lot of time. And especially if you're in a block setting, I mean, you feel like you're force feeding everything because, you begin to lose actually, in hours, based in a block. So, yeah, I would agree and have no disagreement on that. And hopefully we can address that as through a couple of ways I mentioned.
Okay. The next question we have, I'm searching because I want to put a link for
Sure.
everyone in the comments. The person asked, is PSERS being worked on? ESPs need a better retirement. And I'm going to let you tell our viewers how you feel about that. Superintendent Woods, that's our retirement for our bus drivers and cafeteria workers, our custodians, our maintenance personnel, as you know.
Yeah.
But there is next Thursday morning at 8 a.m. a Senate retirement hearing on this issue. So for our members that may not know about that yet, I'm going to put a link in the comments to our GAE form where we are asking you for your information so that we can provide that, because we know since the Senate hearing is at 8 a.m., our bus drivers will probably be dropping their students off. Our cafeteria workers will probably be serving breakfast to students. So they will not be able to attend, but we will be there on their behalf.
Yeah. Well, I think that as you look at, especially a lot of our support people, why did they get into that profession? Why did they choose that? A lot of that dealt with retirement, deals with benefits. And, I think that we want to make sure that we offer them the best. Again, in my view, why not let them be a part of the teacher retirement system? I think especially as we begin to have serious conversation about, individuals maybe going into certain areas. I know with the state retirement system, they have not seen a lot of cost of living increase over that. When you compare, our retirement to the state retirement, I'm very thankful about the teacher retirement system. So I think that, I think trying to look at a way in which we might get either grandfather or make that switch would be possible. Of course, that means having a discussion with Buster Evans and, and that group to see what's feasible. But yeah, I think that, if we're going to attract, if we're going to keep individuals, then definitely the retirement is something that we look at. I think it's one of the things that keeps a lot of teachers in that, because we do have a very good retirement system, on our end. So, it's a discussion. I hope that, the Senate or the House, will look into that. It would be my recommendation to the governor as well to expand that, especially as we think about having a unified pay scale for, our support people.
Can you tell us about your experience working with legislators to positively impact education issues?
Well, I think, it's definitely, has been interesting over the years. I think early on, people didn't, this little Georgia guy. And so it took a little bit of relationship building. I think, getting the right people in policy as well. And Dr. Taylor and her staff are doing an amazing job. I think that probably since, she took the helm of policy, we have seen a lot of great advances for us in the state. We begin to make good conversations with people. Of course, when you talk about the General Assembly, that means, dealing with the governor. Governor Kemp and I have a great relationship, and I think because we've been able to work together, we've seen things, we talk, and which is very important. But across the board, we have great relationships with people on both sides of the aisle. We've had some good sessions here, over the past few years, and I think that hopefully, with another 4 years, we'll continue to develop those relationships and make some great strides for all of us in the state of Georgia when it comes to public education.
Okay, we have someone else who has been watching, who has a question. And she says, Superintendent Woods, I know you are in favor of less testing. I think we all are. But since testing is not going away completely, do you think the current format of the milestones test should be revised so that they take less time and be less stressful for students?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I think that, we can control, the environment and treat tests as just a normal test. And I think that's part of our job as educators, is not to put that stress on that. But that means we reduce the stress on our teachers, because I think that, kids sense things, and they, and especially if we're, just hitting them real hard with the test, it does, create some anxiety. For myself, I think we've looked at, some models. We have, a pilot looking at maybe a formative. I'm not sure exactly where that is going to go, and, what does that look like? One of the things, unfortunately, when we talk about testing, we are having to work with the federal government. So, that's something that we have to kind of get, a nod from them on some of the things that we look at. I think one of the things I would love to see is definitely a change. If it's not so much a formative, something very similar to the NAEP, where we're not testing each year. I think if we teach every other year, or not teach, but test every other year, and then find out where our kids are, and then use that off year to bring them up, because they need to be caught up. I mean, we can't have kids that, each year they perhaps exponentially get a little further behind because we're so focused on that year of grades or, testing our standards. So I think, it definitely needs to be changed a little bit. We are looking at revising both our English language arts and our math standards. So again, that will have some, impact on our testing. I think, we're having some discussions with Dr. Timberlake and say, how can we get the same information, but with less testing involved in that? We have been able to cut back on that, and hopefully we'll continue to see that. But right now, foreseeable future, we will have milestones. I don't see that changing. I am pleased to say that we have something created by our vendor DRC with our beacon. So give our teachers a formative tool that is aligned to our standards. So I think at least having that support, will kind of help out. But definitely, as we begin to think about testing, revamping our English language arts, reading, and math standards, then it's going to give us an opportunity. But if we can't get a formative test, then maybe something similar to the NAEP. I'm thinking, if it works for the feds and NAEP, why can't it work for us down here in the state of Georgia as well?
One thing I would like to say about that is I feel like, too, with the reduction in the state testing, I feel like we need to look at our districts that
Yes.
They impose a whole lot of time taking different tests that is not required by the state and coming from the district level.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what we saw with the Burnout report. Because we have actually, I said, brought down the amount of required testing. I think we may be up by maybe one test above the federal requirement, 2 at most. So you can see that we're pretty well aligned with what the feds expect in that area. With our local districts, we are data rich. We test and test, and I mean, how many ways can you test and get the same information? And so I think it is trying to use our time smarter. And again, going back, so we do have a tool that is completely aligned in both math and English language arts and reading as a formative tool. So I think we've provided, access to something, and I think you just have to trust that. Again, I understand you're going back and you're going against the grain of what history and culture has taught you, what you've been raised up to do. And I know that the word accountability, means a lot, but, I think that if we find that we are more efficient with our time, allowing our teachers to work with their students to address learning needs, we'll be actually in a better place. And definitely that means you got to give up something. And, hopefully we're seeing, districts, begin to take a deep evaluation of what they are testing, how much they're testing, and are they actually getting information? Because I remember the days when we were testing, but a teacher didn't have any time to actually, dive into the data. So if you've done all this testing, but you have no time in which to review it, I'd have to say, what have you actually accomplished at all?
Joe just put a link in for our viewers in the comments of the report from the Teacher Burnout Task Force. And I know that I was very happy to see that everybody on that task force were people that are in the classroom every day.
Yes.
So
Teacher Burnout report. So
yeah, so it was classroom teachers, because
yes.
I feel like we got the real story. Now, when I read it, I was kind of like, yeah, everything that was in there, I have heard from teachers across the state. So I felt like it was really good. Where are we going from here with that?
Well, I think we've already, started some action steps. I was glad that the report was not just, a collection of information, but it did have action, involved with it. I think there's two different approaches. Again, how do we have to handle that? What can we do at the state level? What do we actually have the authority to do to help, mitigate, some of the things that are there? I think opening, ways in which the teacher evaluation, that's something we have direct access to. That will, I think that tool and that revision will definitely help out both our teachers and our leaders, because we're not talking just about TEKS, leaks, because you can't separate the two. Our leaders definitely help really support that environment and learning environment. And so we want to make sure we have a great tool for that. Thinking about ways in which, we are providing resources for our teachers, whether, from our end, trying to reduce the amount of unpack they have to do with the standards. Again, allowing them to get directly into the meat of what they're responsible for is extremely important. I think, trying to make sure we roll out that, provide services across the board. And we're having discussion internally to see how does that happen. I think I'm real pleased that, a lot of our supports right now are, especially in the area of standards, are being developed by Georgia teachers. And so, we're using the experts that are out there. We want to continue to make sure that our teachers are involved in the process, to elevate their, profession. So it means continue to have that dialogue. I think setting the example for our local districts. To be honest, I would say if I was a superintendent, what I would encourage superintendents, create your own teacher burnout report. Find out what is unique to you. Because we have 181 school districts. Well, everybody's going to be a little bit different. And I think that you always want to find out, if you're leader, you got to have a sense of the pulse that's there. And I think teaching, and respecting our teachers as the professionals they are, will be ongoing. But so it's really a dual approach. Again, what can we do to support at the state level, but also setting the good example, and hopefully that our local districts will take this information and build on that as well.
Okay. The questions keep coming. What can you do to help make sure education majors are better prepared for the real classroom? From my experience, many of them are not prepared for what they will face, and it contributes to them leaving the profession.
Yeah, definitely that requires a conversation with higher ed. They're the ones that are preparing our teachers. I think that they have to look at their model. I think, as we look at listening to teachers, especially those teachers first, second, third year. What did you find when you were in college, but yet what did reality show you when you got here? I think having more internship, more classroom experience would definitely help out. Like I said, you can't understate the value of being in the classroom because that's where you learn. And I think giving them more experience on that level would definitely help out. Using our master teachers as those individuals who are mentors. One of the things we have looked at, especially as we begin to think about our TEKS evaluation revamp, letting our experienced and seasoned teachers be mentors for our young people. There's no reason that a young person should walk into a classroom and not have an experienced teacher that is there walking with them side by side, to help have given them time, giving them, advice and taking that wisdom. Because I even think that, for myself, I had Miss Roberts. Miss Roberts was across the hall. I came into, Osceola in 1988, but she was a math teacher, but she was a fantastic mentor and teacher. And she helped guide me, through that first, second year and, and taught me a lot about, what it really meant to be a teacher. So I understand the question. I think it is always important with that. I would even, extend that even to leaders. What does leadership development look like? But we have to have, I think, a deep conversation with our colleges of education and to say, this is what we really need, in prep. What are the tools? What are there? I think, definitely the area of what I've heard from teachers, especially in an area like classroom management. I don't know that we spend enough time on that. And so I think we've got to, look and revamp about what does an education look like? How do we provide, even, giving our young people an experience, because classrooms look different. I mean, what's a Title I versus, a gifted class? I mean, those are different challenges that are out there. So yeah, it's something we'll continue to work with. I think, talking with our new chancellor, maybe we have some avenues for that across the state, but that's going to require that. And I think for us at the state level, thinking about what does professional development look like, because it doesn't need to be one size fits all. We have to tailor to those people where they are in life. And I think even at our districts, be thinking about that as well, because everybody's a little bit different. Subject matter is different as well. And so I think, we look at it from two perspectives on that, my experience, what I'm able to do, classroom management, but also, being able to teach my subject in a very, successful manner.
Okay, and I'm gonna put this in. Our
Sure.
our aspiring educators have told us that they feel like they need a full year in the classroom, and these are our teachers that are aspiring. But the caveat there is we can't afford a whole year in the classroom without pay to begin. So
Yeah.
that's what they are telling us that they feel like they need. So moving forward, I'm always going to keep that in mind, that's they feel like they need that full year before, as what we called student teaching, that they feel like they need a full year, but they're saying we need to be paid during that year because we can't make it otherwise.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Next question. And I knew this was coming. Would you provide clarity on what teachers are and aren't permitted to teach now that the so-called divisive concepts bill was passed and signed into law?
Okay. Well, I think I always go back to what do we expect you to teach? And that's in our standards. I think that anything that's in our standards, we expect to be taught. We have no problems with. I guess, being a history teacher, someone that would probably fall in that category of, what could or could not be taught, or what would be divisive or not divisive. I think it is just trying to, and I would just say, use common sense on that. I don't want anybody to be afraid of saying I can't do, but I think having, our standards as a baseline is what I would always pull through. I think for myself, looking at our standards, there would be nothing that I would be concerned with. And I think stay on that. You're fine as a teacher. I don't think there's any issues with that. And I just, if your heart is in the right place, you're doing the right thing. I just don't see this as being an issue. Once again, I looked at the law, I've looked at everything, and go back as a lens of a teacher. And I think about, was there anything that I saw that would prevent me from being the teacher that I was? And I did not see anything in that area. I felt that, whatever I taught, in which, again, being a history teacher, I taught about, the unpleasant truth of life. I taught about, slavery. I taught about Jim Crow, the Trail of Tears, segregation, and, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. So, those were things, they're just fact. And I think that when you teach fact, you have it on your side, there's nothing to be afraid of. So, so that was my, suggestion there. Like, as I said, for myself as a teacher, I could teach and I would teach the same way and nothing would change.
Okay. And so we know that our systems now have a complaint process for this.
Mhm.
And so I think educators are concerned that there is going to be a parent that, for whatever reason, will complain when teachers are teaching those unpleasant facts.
Yeah.
And so do teachers have the, can they have the trust in the system that they are not going to face adverse consequences because they are teaching the truth about our history?
Yeah. Well, again, going back that, when you have truth on your side, the case stands by itself. I don't think it's anything that, you look at, especially whether it's our nation's history or world history, there were atrocious things that took place. And that's not unique to our country by any means as a person who taught world history. But I think, having, trust in the process, again, things are there to safeguard. And I think there is a process in place. I would say the number of things that I get hit with or complained about or accused of, I have no, process with me. I just get slammed with them, from time to time. And, when people complain and, about things, but again, I just, if you are teaching and falling in that category of what I just shared with you, you shouldn't have any problem because, I said, the process is designed to protect. And again, I think making sure that the appeals process, that everybody can, make their case. And I think there again, when you can sit down and say, this is the standards of Georgia, this is the historical context that's there, then you're fine on that.
Okay. I am putting for our viewers in the comments a link. Superintendent Woods, we are asking for our members' input, but we would
Okay.
like to hear your input. As you know, there is a Senate committee on studying education funding here in
Yes.
Georgia and our QBE formula. What would you like to see come out of that process?
Well, I think as you look at this, of course, to bring us up to, I guess, a more modern approach to education, 1985 looked a lot different. I was teaching in the 80s, so, we didn't have things such as computers or smart boards or, all the things. I actually used chalk, and people remember the old Ditto Master, overhead projector. So, we have more kids in the system today. We deal with things that, probably we see a higher special ed population that's dealing with that. We still have, a lot of poverty in the state that we deal with. And so I think it is trying to modernize that, in which we can, I think, give our districts, some flexibility, because again, every district looks a little bit different. You think about what QBE looks like. I think in somewhere like Tolliver County, a little over 100 kids, K-12. Well, you've got to mention, you probably have a good teacher ratio there. But I was out there a year or so ago, and Superintendent Ford said, do you want to see our mall? And I'm thinking, mall in Tolliver County, what are you talking about? And, we walked to the front of the door, and he pointed to the Dollar General. Well, it's not a lot of tax money coming in there. So, you see that there are issues there. I think, we've had several attempts to what I would say overhaul the system. And I think that instead of trying to eat the elephant at one big gulp, maybe we should look at it trying to parceling that out, looking at some things that we know that are doable, that we can, prioritize and make some gradual changes on that. Maybe a lot more doable. I think that, last time we were trying to look at this, we were right there in the middle of a recession, and probably not the best of times to be looking at things we look at. So that's where I'm hoping. We're already having talks with people across the street in the governor's office to begin that dialogue, because it is something we need to look at. So much has changed since 1985, and we don't need to shortchange our kids, and we need to have a system that reflects where we are today. Right now you're thinking, we're talking about having kids 1-to-1 broadband. Well, that takes a different approach on that, and requires additional funding. Busing kids. You talk about the number of kids we have. Well, you've got to transport them. You got to get to school somehow. And as we found out, it's just like when diesel goes up $4 or $5 a gallon, that adds a nice little chunk that nobody planned on, and you have to make that adjustment. And plus, I think about building new schools today. Building costs are what they are, and you have to make adjustments on that as well.
Okay. One of the things that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not sure where the discussion came from, but it was about school lunch. And we heard very clearly that there is a need across Georgia to continue every student receiving free breakfast and lunch at school. Is there a way that we can do that statewide?
Well, I think you look, so much of that is tied to our federal funding as well. Because technically, really, our school lunch program comes out of the Department of Agriculture. So we work with a sister agency at the federal. So it is trying to look at that, looking at funding across the board. Is it something that again potentially could be done? I think maybe we look at that in our QBE rewrite as well. That it's again because talking about a funding source there. Every kid needs to have a good lunch and breakfast. I think we're talking about how do we fuel our kids, and if you're hungry, I'll be honest, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s aren't at the top of my list. And so we've got to get the kids, ready to eat, and I think have some flexibility with that. I think it's having a discussion with the federal government to see what are some ways in which maybe we might could expand that, and if there's something we need to adjust in our funding formula to make that happen, then we can do so. But I think trying to reach out and say, well, where do we get our food from? Looking, being maybe a little more proactive on some of our purchasing and giving us some flexibility there, which is something I think we can probably get a little flexibility from the state level.
Okay. One of the things that I hear all the time from educators, experience this myself, my years in the classroom, and I don't think it's gotten better. And I know this is a district issue, but I'm hoping we can find some way. We have waivers for everything else, so let's figure out a way to do this. Unencumbered planning time for teachers.
Yeah.
I hear frequently, every day during my planning time, there's some different meeting. There's some different professional development I'm required to sit through. And what I want to be doing is in my classroom preparing to teach my students.
Yeah.
Also with the waivers, we know a lot of our elementary educators are no longer getting their duty-free lunch, particularly with pandemic precautions. Would you be in support of something to guarantee those two items for our educators here in Georgia?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, time is one thing that's very precious. And I think if you even go back to the burnout report, a lot of it referred to, quality time. You got to have time to plan and perform and just have, a dedicated time in which you can do things. I understand whether you're a coach or, an administrator, and, when you talk about PLs and stuff, and that's your, child, your baby, it's your passion. But I think again, going back, never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher. Because I always hated when I got, my planning, and it was like, well, Richard, can you come and watch somebody's class or do something of that nature? If that is something you're doing, then I think school districts need to pay teachers for that. Their time is worth, something. But I think that, for the most part, it does come down to really management. And that's something that we may have to look at if you're a leader, if you are an individual. How do you maximize that time? I mean, it's real easy just to say, can I get this teacher and just move them over or just take away from their time? But I think in true leadership, you become solution oriented. And so I think addressing that is something that our educators, our leaders need to really focus on, giving, our teachers that time that they have, because they actually get a lot done, to be honest. When it's, and especially I think of myself, when I was a coach, well, once I got through it with my day, then I was out there with the kids. So I didn't have, I was, for several hours, I was involved with that. And actually, we all do have families. So I think you have to keep that in mind. And to be honest, if things like that can probably cause somewhat of a disruption in the family. And if things aren't not, going well at home, or if there's some angst there at home, then it's going to show up at work and you're not going to be giving your best. So I think there are things, especially areas that, yeah, I'm all for that. We need to guard that time.
Okay. And we are coming toward the end of our time together, but I do want to touch on something because I promised in the promo I would. The teacher keys replacement pilot. I know that was in House Bill 1295 that we strongly supported, that didn't make it across the line on Sunny Die, but the department is still going ahead with that.
Yes.
So I'm sure this is going to be a multi-year process. So I don't want, can you tell our educators that, so that I don't want anyone to get real excited and think, oh, Teacher Keys is going away next year. How long is this process going to take, and will classroom educators be involved in that?
Yeah, well, the educator is going to be, integral to the part. They have to be, because we're talking about teachers. It's just like, we talked about the standards. We brought in, 200 plus teachers to be involved in the standards process because they're the ones that teach. They're the ones that are involved with it. Looking at the teacher keys right now, I think we're looking at probably trying to get maybe 12 pilot districts. That may change or vary. It may look at we may break that down in the schools. So that process is just starting. So we're, working on it as we speak. I don't think we don't want to rush in anything. We don't want to, do something that's haphazard. So I think trying to get everything lined up as much as we can. But as I shared, what is the intent of the TEACS process? What are we trying to do? For me, it's yes, we are looking at, we're going to be accountable, but I think, it's coaching accountability. How do we continue to improve? And I think that's for all levels. How do we recognize that there are differences between the first year, second year, third year, 10th year, 20th year teacher? And what are the needs of those teachers? Again, how do we, progress and let them get better. I think, for myself, thinking about our experienced teachers, maybe involve them in the teacher evaluation process. One of the things we always said, you had an administrator, but they had no background in what they were evaluating. In which I can imagine if I was in the high school, you put me in a calculus class, what you're saying sounds really great. Okay. Even though I can recognize good teaching skill, but I think it is having an individual that understands the concept of delivery of that information would be valuable. So I would expect that if in an ideal world, it'd be great to say that we would be finished this year, but I think it would at least probably be a 2-year process. Because we do have to not only involve the teaching process, but also the leading process. What does that look like on that end? I mean, I firmly believe you cannot separate the two because you're going to have interaction between that. And so I think it is trying to, find out what that. So I'm, for myself, I'd love to say 1 year, but that may be a little optimistic in that. And, we don't want to, put too much of a burden on our teachers, especially with our math and science or math and English language arts folks as we start to begin to roll out these standards as well. So we're going to be very measured with it, but teachers are going to be right there with us every step of the way. And because we want to make sure whatever we do that it doesn't look like what we've always done in the past. I think that's been a very compliant model, a very gotcha model, and it's basically a one-size-fits-all model. And just as we know with kids are different. Well, guess what? Teachers are different as well. So we need to respect that.
Yes. Okay. So we have come to the end of our hour. And so I'm going to, again, Superintendent Woods, let you have the final statement. We have endorsed you, and GAE is supporting your candidacy for re-election. And if you want, just take a couple of moments to tell our members why they, like those of us on the committee, should know that you are the superintendent who will continue to support public education, educators, and students.
Again, first of all, thank you for this time we've had tonight. And again, the GAE, again, for their endorsement. But it does mean a lot when fellow teachers, I think, endorse a fellow teacher. I think that's where, I think about going back to our original statement of why it's important to have an individual who has that experience, who focuses on teachers in the classroom and kids. I think my record has proven that I've always, had that focus. Nothing has changed. I think one of the things, make sure that that I didn't get, just overwhelmed by the political process. I think there were a lot of things, a lot of, individuals, tried to move me in a direction that would not have been good for public education, wanted me to make some calls that would not have been good. And I, you cannot sacrifice integrity. I think that's one of the things that I think that people know, whether we agree or disagree, they're going to find out that I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be straightforward, but what I do know is that we can work together, and I found out what we can do and what we've accomplished. GAE has been a great partner over the years, and want to continue that relationship. I think that at this time, having stability within that area is so critical. People know the dialogue that we have had tonight. I've made no secret that this is what I feel that we need to work on in public education. But that has come from listening to people in the field, to realize that I don't have to live with those decisions. I may hear about them, but I don't have to live with them. And again, the goal is to make sure that we are, preparing our kids for life, giving them the best education experience that we possibly can. And in order to do that, then we've got to have, a teacher workforce that has time to spend with their kids, to get to know their kids, to build that relationship, to give them, the tools that allow them to evaluate, their students. And, and, you know, and hopefully enjoy what they do. You know, we, you know, for all of education, you know, it's not like we go in and say, you know, I'm going to be a millionaire. You know, it's not the money. The money is never, you know, I mean, it's nice, but it's not the driving factor of why I got into the profession. And I think that everyone would say, I, you know, believe I'm going to make the difference. I'm going to make the difference, you know, in at least one child. And that passion has driven us each and every day that we go to work, because we know that we are making a difference. We may not get the, you know, the accolades in some professions, but you know, I think especially as I shared at the beginning, what I saw with our educators coming out of COVID, I couldn't be more proud as state school superintendent. There's not a you know, a stronger workforce that's out there, a better group of people. If you want to see dedication, you want to see love, you want to see commitment, just look at a Georgia teacher and all of our education family. Because to be honest, everybody could have said enough is enough and I quit, but they didn't. And, you know, I couldn't ask any more than that. So I look forward to continue to represent you as State School Superintendent of Georgia. As I share with all, I said, you know, our door, my door is always open. And, you know, here, and we want to continue to collaborate. I firmly believe our best days are ahead. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years together.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us this evening. And we will see you in 2 weeks for our next Facebook Live on September 21st. You all have a great evening.
Okay, thank you.